Today we're going to do a bike check of my Santa Cruz Chameleon. This is my 2018 Santa Cruz Chameleon. I've changed quite a few things on this bike and I figure it's time for a bike check. And I know a lot of you are curious about the Santa Cruz Chameleon builds and what's worth swapping out and what can you make do with for a long time. So here's my bike. I've had it for 8 months, probably got, I don't know, 5,000 miles on it. And yeah, I use it for everything from bike parks to dirt jumps to 50-mile bike packing days, or just shredding on simple trails. I really like the feel of a hardtail, so I don't think I'll ever be without a hardtail, and this is my favorite hardtail I've ever ridden. As you know from my review, which we'll link up above, it's because of this super short chainstay here. Makes it a super playful bike. This started life as a 2018 Santa Cruz Chameleon R Plus build. The R build tells you what components it has on it, and the Plus means it has plus tires instead of 29-inch tires. And I like the plus tires. You can air down in the back, get a little bit more cushion out of it and not get beat up on rocky trails. And I use it for bike packing, like I said, so sand, gravel, even a little bit of snow. The wider tires really help with that. So the R Plus build is not a great value for the money. Mainly what you're paying for is the frame, and the frame is overpriced. That being said, I can't find another frame with chainstays this short. Or I'd be tempted to switch. I love the Santa Cruz enough because of that short chainstay. Pretty much the whole reason I'm riding this bike is that short chainstay and the ability to run 3.0 tires. So here's what I've changed. I've swapped out the grips. I cannot stand Santa Cruz stock grips. This is all personal preference stuff. I'm running ESI extra chunky grips. I actually tried the wolf tooth grips before this. They're even bigger than this. I think they're 32 or 34 millimeter diameter. They were too big. It was uncomfortable to ride with, so I went down to ESI extra chunkies. This came with an NX 11-speed shifter, but after a few bike packing trips and over time, it developed a lot of slop in the shifter, so I upgraded it to a GX shifter. This was like 25 bucks from Fanatic Bike Co. They were awesome. Huge upgrade just going from the NX to the GX. So it's still 11-speed. I'm still running the NX rear derailleur, but this shifter is a lot crisper. As you know, on my video when I was building this up, I'm not a fan of the level T brakes. The brakes themselves are fine, but the angle, you could not adjust the angle where the hose goes into the caliper, so they were at some really odd angles, and the cable routing was a little bit off for that. So I ended up swapping those out for some Guide RSC brakes. These are my favorite brakes. Some people love Shimano's, and I'm okay with Shimano's, but I prefer the feel of the Guides. And in 2018, they fixed the issue with them swelling. And so, you know, Guides get a lot of bad rap online, but they're by far my favorite brakes. So I really like the adjustable contact point here. So each lever has an adjustable spot where it grabs in the lever stroke. So if you like them to grab immediately, you can change it with this dial. If you like them to grab at the bars, you can change it with this dial. I also love the easy toolless reach adjust right here. Big fan of those. Still running the stock race face bars. I don't love the sweep of them, but they're okay. I really like the race face next carbon bars on my other bike, but I don't need to change these, so I haven't. I'm still trying to keep it within a reasonable budget. Let's see. I've also upgraded the dropper post lever with a wolf tooth remote lever. And I really like that lever. Very well built, well designed, super smooth. It works great with the race face affect dropper. I've also got a timber bell on the front. That's really helpful. I've got that on all my bikes. It's helpful when we're in Sedona, especially where there's hikers everywhere. They hear you coming, they get out of the way, and they thank you, which is really odd because I always feel rude turning on my bell, like, get out of my way, I'm coming. I always stop for them, but when they hear the bell, the sea of people parts, and we are able to ride right through, and they love us for it. So I'm a huge fan of the timber bells, and it's great that they're so cheap. I'm running a Fox 36 up front. It's probably overkill for what I'm doing, but I weigh 175 and I ride pretty aggressively, and I like the feel of this stiffer fork. But to be honest, on a bike like this, I'm not smashing down enduro trails very often on it. And the stock fork was okay on it. I just had this lying around from my other bike, and I threw it on, and I bumped up the travel to 140. So it makes it slightly slacker, which I like. That's probably my biggest complaint about this frame, is that the head tube angle is a little steeper than I like. Now, for pump tracks and bike packing, head tube angle's fine, but for riding trails, I like a slacker head tube. I tried it at 160, and it was a little slacker, but it didn't steer all that great, so I dropped it down to 140. I'm running a fender up front, which is super helpful. It keeps dust and junk off my stanchions as well. That's a huge reason I run this, to keep my seals lasting longer. We don't ride in mud super often, but anytime you do hit a little puddle or mud or something, it's really nice to have that. Up front, I have the completely stock SRAM front wheel. It's a super cheap hub, laced to a pretty cheap race face AR40. Front hubs I've never destroyed. I'm fine going as cheap as possible. I think that's a great place to save money. Same with rims. I've never pinch flatted a front wheel, and I've never bent a front wheel, so I kept the front wheel stock. I'm running a Maxxis High Roller 2, which this is my first time running the High Roller 2, and I actually love it for a front tire. If you lean the bike and get real aggressive in your corners, it's a great tire. If you don't, and you kind of ride on top of the bike and ride kind of straight and turn with the bars, you're going to find it a little bit washy. But when you lean aggressively, these side cornering knobs are awesome. And I run a true 3.0 tire on this for bike packing. There's a big difference between a 2.6 or a 2.8 or a 3.0, and I really like that. So front wheel's completely stock. I've upgraded the rotor to a 200mm rotor. I like big brakes on my bikes. I've got a barfly mount for my Wahoo computer, and that's the cockpit up front. The frame is still covered in helicopter tape. It looks a little ugly where the dust has stuck to it, but I didn't buy this bike for looks, and it's protecting the frame, so I'm keeping it on there for now. I'd love to swap the graphics out for something cool and unique, but to be honest, I just want to ride more than I want to tinker with my bike, so I've just been riding it a lot. I'm running the stock Race Face Affect cranks. I'm running the stock 30-tooth chainring. For pedals, I'm running the 1UP composite platform pedals. I like them. They are a big platform. That's great for bike packing, and I like it when you don't get your foot quite on just right. You can still pedal real well with them. That being said, for trail riding, I do like the Race Face Chesters a little bit better. The smaller pedal just gives me a little bit better footwork. I could take either one though. I like them both quite a bit. And usually what I do is my 510s will be so worn out from one bike from being on the Chesters that I'll switch to this just so the pins are in a new position and it feels like I have new shoes again. I'm still running the stock Race Face Affect dropper, but I'm running the 150mm dropper in a small frame, which is awesome that fits. I only have a 28-inch inseam. I have super short legs, but it's amazing I can still fit a 150 dropper. So that gives me a high seat post when I'm crushing out big miles, and then I can slam it all the way down when I'm at the dirt jumps. Really love that feature. I love how short the seat tube is on this. I love how compact all these angles are. It's a nice compact frame. One thing that's not on here are our Oveja Negra bags. We use their bags exclusively for our bike packing trips, and they're awesome. In the back, I'm running a Specialized ground control grid casing, which is the thicker, beefier casing. One thing, I don't really care about weight on this bike, but my rear wheel is extremely heavy, and I'll explain that in a minute. And these tires are heavy, but they haven't popped on me, and I would rather have a heavier tire that is reliable when I'm bike packing, because I don't want to be fixing tires in the backcountry in the middle of nowhere. I'd rather just have a little bit more weight. And when your bike's loaded up with 30 or 40 pounds of gear, an extra half pound on your rear tire is really nothing. And when you go to really thick, wide tires like this, you don't need to run a super aggressive tread. That being said, if they made like a 3.0 DHF, I'd probably be running one just because I love those tires. Let's see. I'm still running the stock WTB Volt saddle, and it's actually become my all-time #1 favorite saddle. I love it. But that's personal preference. Running the stock cassette, nothing changed there. Stock NX rear derailleur, which is fine. It shifts just fine. I have XX1 on my other bike, and I can feel a difference, but it's maybe a 5% difference. And if that's worth 300 bucks to you, go for it. But I think the NX is a great value for the money, so I haven't felt the need to swap that out. I would love to run GX Eagle on this one day for bike packing, but for trail riding, I don't feel like I need it, especially with the smaller 30-tooth front. I could go either way. 12 speed's nice, especially bike packing where you might be on the road and you might be doing 10 miles on the road, and being able to have that really small, 9-tooth on there or 10-tooth and just really cruise, that's really nice. And then you'd have the big pie plate in the back to be able to climb the big stuff. One thing about Plus bikes is because there's so little room here, when you shift to the big gears, the chain gets awfully close to the tire and it picks up a lot of junk, so your chain gets a lot dirtier on a Plus bike like this, because I can't even fit my finger between the chain and my tire. I'm running a 180mm rotor on the back. Once again, I'm running the SRAM Guide RSC rear brakes, and because of the angle of the hose that I can adjust it, there's no weird kinks in there. Everything lines up great. I'm running my dropouts all the way forward with a 3.0 27.5 tire. The only time I get rubbing is when I'm cornering extremely hard on like a slalom course or on some dirt jumps or something, and I will get a little bit of flex out of this rear wheel. My rear wheel I had custom built for me at Fanatic Bike Company. They are awesome, by the way. We love those guys over there. And it's laced to my favorite hub. Now, even if you bought the top line, everything, best of everything bike, you're never going to get this rear hub on a bike. They just don't come factory. And so, to me, I'd rather buy a lower end bike, swap out the brakes and the rear hub, and get a pretty dang good bike at that price. Because even if I bought the best of the best, it still wouldn't have the engagement I like. And for those of you that are new to it, engagement is how much play is in the pedals before the chain grabs. This is instant engagement. The second I push this, the wheel moves. You're gonna shift. It's dead silent. It's as silent as the front hub. There's no ratcheting mechanism in these Onyx hubs. Now they come at a cost. They're expensive, very expensive, like all good hubs. They're a little bit more than Industry 9, a little bit less than Chris King. The other big disadvantage is they're very heavy, but they're also very strong, and I do a lot of ratcheting moves and a lot of technical stuff where I'll do like a half pedal and then wait and then keep pedaling. Even something like a DT350 hub, which is a great well-known hub, or a 270, there's enough play in there that when you go to ratchet, it loses your momentum. And anyway, rear hub is probably the most important component on any bike for me. So running the Onyx hub, and it's laced to a DT Swiss XM551, which I like fine. It flexes a tiny bit, not a ton, but I got 3 inches of a rubber tire on there, and stuff's gonna flex a little bit. I love my carbon Nox rims on my other bike, but for bike packing, I just feel better being in the middle of nowhere. I don't want the potential for cracking a rim. That being said, my Nox rims have been so incredibly bomb-proof, I'm starting to think I would be okay running carbon wheels on this bike. I've smashed some serious rocks on my enduro bike, and nothing's happened to them. The problem with carbon wheels is when they do break, they break catastrophically, and you're not limping out of there. You're done. And if I'm 40 miles away from the nearest road on a bikepacking trip and my rim's done, that's a problem. So that's why I went with this. Worst case, I got a dent, I could bend it back with some pliers or something and then keep going. So that's it. It's a simple bike. I love this thing. That being said, I'm not married to Santa Cruz. I love that it's aluminum, because when you're running Plus tires, aluminum is usually a really bad material for hardtails because aluminum frames are stiff. Same with a lot of carbon. Now, that's changing, but we used to want the stiffest frames we could find. But what that ends up doing on a hardtail is transferring the stiffness to your legs and your calves and your body, and you just feel beat up at the end of a day. Well, with Plus tires, we can run these in the 13 to 15 to 20 PSI range, and it totally takes out the sting of any harsh frame. So while I love the ride of steel and titanium and carbon, I feel like aluminum is a fantastic frame material to build a Plus bike out of. So I love the Santa Cruz Chameleon because they were able to get that rear end so short. It makes it fun for manuals, wheelies, playing around corners, even loaded up bike packing. It's a ton of fun. That being said, if I could find another frame that's 800 bucks cheaper that still has the super compact rear end, I'd have no problem getting something other than the Chameleon. So to me, the whole reason I got it is this. And I'd changed the head angle a little bit. I love the short seat tube. I think the colors are cool. I love the lifetime warranty. And I do like Santa Cruz as a company, but I truly believe this bike is priced $500 to $800 too much. Between the Commensals and the Orbeas, and there's just so many awesome plus hardtails out there right now, but what they can't do is get that super short chainstay. So until I find something with an even shorter chainstay, I'm going to be putting lots and lots of miles on my Chameleon. So the big question is, which build should you get? Should you get the D build? Should you get the R Plus build? Should you get the S build? Is there a big difference between the 2019s and the 2018s? I haven't seen the 2019s in person yet, and I'm just going off what's on paper, and those are kind of inaccurate. I believe the R Plus is a great place to start. That's where I would start if I were to do it again. Comes with a dropper. And even though this isn't the fork it comes with, that Fox 34 Rhythm is a pretty good fork. It just feels good. It's really simple to set up, and it works for all sorts of riding. And you can boost it up to 130 mil travel. So I would get the R Plus build. I would swap out the rear wheel. I would swap out the brakes and the grips and have a party on it. And maybe the shifter. Like this, I think this is the lowest quality where it doesn't count and the highest quality where it does count for me. So I cannot think of a better way to build this bike for the budget for me, for my style. Hope that's helpful to you. Love this bike. I love hardtails. Everyone should have a hardtail for riding pump track, for learning skills, for learning how to manual and bunny hop, and just for having a blast on trails that are simple, that on an enduro bike become boring. So anyway, huge fan of the Santa Cruz Chameleon. And I know a lot of you guys are a fan too, and a lot of you guys watching have them as well, so thought you'd enjoy that. Anyway, thanks for geeking out with me. Get dusty.
Hey everybody, I hope you guys enjoyed Steve's updated Chameleon bike check. That has been a highly requested video, and we've been wanting to bring that one to you for a really long time. If you're new to Dusty Betty, that guy is Steve, and he is my husband. He is my full-time travel companion. He is my riding buddy. He is my partner in creating content for you guys through Dusty Betty, and so you'll get to see a lot of him because he's a pretty big part of my story. So I just want to let you guys know that I'm trying to hit the 20,000 subscriber mark on my YouTube channel by the end of the year. So if you haven't already subscribed, I hope that you'll consider it. Also, like my videos. That helps them come up as recommended so that other people can find my videos more easily. You can also support me on Patreon or consider buying a Dusty Betty t-shirt. Thanks so much for watching. You guys are awesome. Get dusty.